Hey everyone, welcome to the channel. Before we get started, don't forget to like and subscribe. Also, drop a comment letting us know where you're watching from and what time it is there. That way, YouTube will keep showing you more stories like this. Now, let's begin. I was about to start my senior year of college, and I was so excited to finish this chapter and move on to what everyone calls the real world. My academic advisor suggested I join the mentorship program for incoming freshmen, acting as a big sister to help them out. I thought it was a great idea, and as my advisor said, it would look great on my resume. I wished I'd had a program like that when I was a freshman. I definitely wouldn't have felt so lost and anxious for the first few months. Everything went really well at first. I met a few of the students assigned to me and genuinely felt like I was helping them ease their anxieties about starting college. On the first day of classes, I was supposed to meet a girl named Carol. She had canceled on me twice already. I figured she didn't need much help, but I was completely wrong. She needed help, but not from me. We finally met on our third attempt. Carol was a beautiful young woman, quite tall and athletic. The conversation was pleasant at first. She seemed confident, independent, and fearless. After chatting for a few minutes, I asked her why she wanted to be in the program. She told me she just wanted to talk to me and see how awesome it was to be a senior. It was nice and refreshing to talk to such a level-headed young person, especially after meeting so many nervous and insecure freshmen. We talked for about 20 minutes and exchanged phone numbers. I didn't offer to meet up again because I didn't think she needed more support, but I told her she could call or text me anytime. About a month later, I started getting notes left on my car. They were short, sweet, and always signed by a secret admirer. I thought it was kind of cute, but since I wasn't looking for a relationship at the time, I never bothered to wonder who it was. Then the notes started getting more frequent and weird, saying things like, "I love you so much. I can't wait for you to realize it's me," and "We can be together forever." At the time, I was working part-time at a 7-Eleven from 3 p.m. to 11 p.m. One night after my shift, I was walking around my car to get to the driver's side door when I saw someone kneeling by it. I took a step back in shock and started screaming. The person ran toward me, tackled me to the ground, but instead of punching or anything like that, they just kept saying in a quiet voice, "Shh, calm down, it's me, it's me." I recognized the voice, but in my panic, I couldn't remember who it belonged to. As I struggled to get free, their hoodie fell back, and I instantly recognized Carol. At first, I begged in confusion, then my begging turned into anger. She held me tighter and told me to calm down. Thankfully, the night manager happened to be outside smoking and heard the commotion. He started running toward my car. Carol jumped up and tried to tell the manager that I was her girlfriend and told him to back off. But I managed to scream for him to call the police. That's when Carol got angry and started punching me in the face. The manager quickly pushed Carol off of me so I could get up. I hid behind him, crying and gasping for air, while Carol just stood there. She stood there, staring at me without blinking. To my surprise, she started crying. Her expression showed genuine agony, but her eyes never left mine. For a moment, I actually felt sorry for her. Then I remembered the punches, and I realized how insane she was. The police arrived and took Carol away. Her parents took care of the school paperwork to withdraw her, and I never heard from Carol again. The origin of the incident was a rumor I heard, so I'm still not entirely sure what happened. I was told that when I gave Carol my phone number at our first meeting, she thought it was a sign from me. She tried to woo me with her secret notes. When she finally worked up the courage to call me, my phone number didn't work. Either I gave her the wrong number, or she entered it incorrectly. Carol took that as an insult and something she had to correct by winning me over. Then she attacked me at my job when I didn't react the way she wanted me to. I've since graduated and gotten an office job. Regardless of whether the end of the story is true or not, that encounter was more than enough to haunt me to this day. I'll never forget the helpless feeling of her on top of me and the punches full of hatred. I'm Ethan. I graduated from the University of California, Berkeley. Looking back, my college years were pretty smooth. I joined a fraternity, got good grades, and had a great time dating. I still keep in touch with a lot of my fraternity brothers. I recently got engaged to Lily, who also went to Berkeley. There's one experience from my freshman year that I think about a lot. It was a big lesson for me when I was looking for a job. I felt pretty lost at the beginning of college. Everything was new. It seemed like everyone around me was so confident, like they had it all figured out. As a freshman, I quickly felt the pressure to have my long-term career planned out. This seems early for an 18-year-old, but it was the norm at my school at the time. If you wanted to go into business, you pretty much had to have an amazing LinkedIn profile. I remember feeling so stressed trying to build a professional image online. It felt like my future depended on who I connected with and what skills I listed on my profile. Anyway, I got everything done that I needed to. I started to look for an internship for the summer after my freshman year. Before long, I got a message that really caught my attention. It was from a respected business company. They expressed interest in my profile. It wasn't an automated message. The text was clearly written. It showed they had looked at my profile and actually wanted to reach out to me. I read the message at least 6 times before I replied. After a day and a few short emails, I was invited to a first-round interview. I spent hours researching the company and preparing for the interview. I practiced every single practice question I could find. Soon after, I got a message from a man named Adrian Kowalski. It's a name I'll remember for the rest of my life. He said that he would be the one interviewing me. The first thing I did was look him up online, but my excitement quickly turned to confusion. I searched all over LinkedIn for Adrian's profile. Strangely, I couldn't find anything. No career or social media profiles. I just brushed it off. I figured maybe he just wanted to stay private. Adrian and I agreed on a time and place for the interview. It was at a coffee shop. This is when I started to feel uneasy. Why wasn't the interview at the school or a library? We had endless perfect places to do an interview right there in our college town. So, I was confused. Still, the address online looked pretty normal, so I didn't think much of it. The day before the interview, I told my friend, Noah, about the situation. He was even more confused than I was. He said the situation seemed shady. I agreed with him. But I thought the position was worth the risk. Noah offered to drive me to the interview since he was free that day. Of course, I agreed and was very grateful. It was around 4 p.m. on the day of the interview. Noah drove to my dorm. I was so nervous. This was my first interview ever. After about 20 minutes of driving, I told Noah to drop me off at the end of the street. I would walk the rest of the way to the coffee shop. Noah offered to wait. I felt so lucky to have such a supportive and kind friend. I walked a few minutes to the location and just stopped in my tracks. I looked up at the construction site in front of me. There was no coffee shop. Even weirder, the whole area was not residential. I was confused. I double-checked my phone and confirmed that I was at the right location. I figured maybe Google Maps just hadn't updated that this place was being rebuilt. I was about to call Noah, but before I could, a voice called out behind me. I spun around. A tall man in a nice suit was standing there. He had a silver Bentley next to him. I felt relieved. Thank goodness I hadn't just left. But his presence felt so out of place with the abandoned surroundings. He walked toward me. He looked confused, too. We shook hands. When I asked him about the construction site, he acted just as surprised as me. He frowned. He put a hand on his chin. Then he said, "Let's find somewhere else." "Get in," he turned back toward his car. "The front seat is yours," he called back. I followed him with a sense of excitement I couldn't contain. I opened the door and got inside the car. I saw there was another man already in the car. He looked at me and gave a friendly smile. I saw that he had his hand in his coat pocket. I saw something that looked like a gun. I started to panic. Everything in my head was just so scrambled. This was clearly a trap. I turned around and ran as fast as I could away from the car. I heard the man call my name behind me, but I didn't even look back. The car was turning around. It was heading in my direction. I had to think fast. There was no way I could outrun a car. The streets around me were a maze. There was nowhere to hide. I felt fear spread all through me. I came to an intersection. I had to choose to go left or right. Logically, left was closer, but my feet went right. I ran across the street and down the block. I knew I was running out of time. Luckily, there was a building ahead with a fire escape low enough for me to jump on. I used all my strength. I ran and grabbed onto the ladder. I had never done a pull-up in my life. I knew this was a matter of life or death. I started to climb, one rung at a time. I didn't stop. The Bentley whipped around the corner and came to a stop in front of the building. I couldn't see the driver, but I knew he was looking at me. There was nothing else I could do. If they chose to come after me, I would have to fight. The car sat there for another moment. Then it sped off down the road, turned left, and never reappeared. I couldn't breathe. I pulled out my phone and called Noah. I was practically screaming into the phone about what had happened. I stayed on the fire escape until he found me. I got in the car. We drove away in silence. The aftermath of that whole situation was pretty minor. I know for sure that they were scammers. I told my story on student forums to remind everyone to be careful. I also told all my student friends. No matter how hard I try to forget, there are times, like now, when I can recall every terrifying detail of what almost was the last day of my life. Now, I'm about to start a family. I have a stable, maybe even a little rich, job. The experience taught me a powerful lesson. Always be aware, question things, and listen to your gut. My name is Alex. I want to share a story from my college days. It's not a fun story, but I want people to be able to take something from it, whether it's a life lesson or anything else. I was pretty wild in college. If friends looked at me, they wouldn't think that. My freshman year was pretty normal. I mainly focused on school, but by my sophomore year, I started getting into partying. It affected me quite a bit. I would often have to walk back to my dorm at 2 a.m. after drinking at a bar. I had spent all my money on shots. My phone was dead. Many people might have something like that happen once. For me, it was at least 6 times. The last time it happened, I don't ever want to relive it. I had just finished having fun at a bar. I had to walk over 2 to 3 miles. I was drunk and tired. I had just gotten into a fight with my girlfriend. My head hurt. My mind was all over the place. At the time, I just wanted to get back to my dorm. I had a bottle of vodka hidden in my room. I just wanted to forget everything. As I walked by, a man was smoking on his porch. He said something like, "Crazy night, huh?" or "Wild night." I mumbled a reply. I saw that he was smoking, so I asked for a cigarette. We talked for a bit. Then, he invited me inside for a beer and to charge my phone. He lived in a dorm, but it was a nicer one across campus. Alcohol was not allowed, but he had a way to hide a few cans of beer in his mini fridge. They were behind a few cans of soda. It was hard to detect. He said nobody would ever suspect it. He looked like a nerd. I thought that was cool. At the time, I just wanted one more can before I went back to my room. It was another 20-minute walk. We talked and drank. After a while, I figured I should head back, but I didn't. I'm not sure why. That's the last thing I remember. The next morning, I woke up with a massive headache. I was in the hallway outside of the man's apartment. I was fully clothed, but my shoes were next to me. It must have been late morning. The sun outside was pretty bright, so a lot of people probably saw me in this sorry state. It was so embarrassing. I had been drunk many times before, but I had never blacked out like that. It felt so wrong. I couldn't figure out why I was fine 1 second. Then, after one beer, I was completely out. At the time, I thought it was just because of exhaustion. I had been drinking and walking for hours, but I had done that walk many times before. I had probably drunk more, and it never happened. Until that night. I think a lot of people have probably figured out what happened already. It's always easier to see things from the outside, but don't underestimate the power of self-denial, especially for young men. It took me almost a year to face the truth. Deep down, I always knew it, but I just pretended like nothing had happened. Around a year later, several other guys from my college and some local people had a similar story. They were walking somewhere late at night. They met a kind-looking stranger. The person offered them a beer, a phone charge, or whatever they needed at that moment. They then went up to the person's apartment or in their car. They had a drink. Then, they woke up hours later with no memory of the events of the evening before. You would think that the people who were suspicious or felt something was wrong would be the first to speak up. But that's not how it works. The more they knew what had happened, the more they were inclined to cover it up. That's why the kind, pervy man was able to get away with it for so long. It wasn't until a guy went to the doctor for unexplained pain in his private parts that the police started to investigate. They finally caught the man. The police said the number of sexual assault victims could be up to 100 people over the past 2 years. 18 cases were confirmed. The rest were still unknown. Many people were almost ready to testify, but in the end, they backed out. The reason was, to testify, they would have to face the reality of what happened to them. I was one of them. If more people had been brave enough to speak up, I wouldn't have backed out. But as I said, that's not how it happened. The feeling of having to stay silent and be scared of myself is something I can't describe. That feeling haunted me for a long time. It made me afraid to face the truth. I deeply regret what I did. Looking back, I realized my wild lifestyle led me to this. Those nights of drinking and partying never stopped. I lived as if I never had to think about the consequences. I thought I could control everything. But the truth is, I lost myself a long time ago. My name is Adam Martinez. I have been a school bus driver for 14 years. I'm 44 and live with my wife. Our only son is studying abroad in France. I love my job. The kids' smiles, their innocent eyes, and their curious questions make it all worth it. I set aside a little bit of my salary to buy school supplies, even though my pay isn't that high. Rulers, pencils, crayons, notebooks, and so on. I'll give the kids those gifts on the first day of the new school year. Or, in case of kids enrolling late, I'll use them as gifts to motivate them to study. One day, I got word from the school that they were getting a new kid named Jason, who's 10 years old. According to the homeroom teacher, Ms. Karen Taylor, Jason has a pretty unique family situation. I put together a set of paints and a school bag, just the basic, affordable kind. I'd let Jason pick which he liked for the two gifts. I hoped Jason would adjust to the new environment quickly. I stopped the bus in front of Jason's house, which was the last pickup point before I took the kids to school. The small house looked pretty run down and was still a bit messy with leaves on the porch. Jason's family probably hadn't had a chance to clean it all up yet. After about 5 minutes of waiting, the house was still quiet, and Jason didn't come out. The other kids on the bus started to get noisy. "Mr. Martinez, we're going to be late for school." Maddie, an 8-year-old girl who's pretty sharp, reminded me. I told the kids to quiet down and drove away. So Jason didn't make it to school on the first day. I let Karen, the homeroom teacher, know. For some reason, I felt like I should keep an extra eye on this boy Jason. Even though I'm not a teacher, I know I'm still part of the education system. The next day, I picked up Jason. He was a skinny boy, much smaller than you'd expect for his age, sitting in front of his house waiting for the bus. Jason looked back at the house, waved goodbye, and then ran toward the bus. The boy stood at the bus door, looking shy and hesitant before getting on. His clothes were messy, with stains that distorted the bear's face printed on them. The clothes didn't even fit him. They were too short. Immediately, I noticed a pretty unpleasant smell. I wasn't sure where it was coming from, but everything had been normal before Jason arrived. "Hey Jason, welcome to your new school. I'm Adam Martinez." I smiled at him and tried not to let the unpleasant smell affect my expression. "Didn't you take a shower before coming to school?" Maddie, the little girl, said in a choked voice, her hands covering her nose and her eyes showing annoyance. The other kids shouted the same as Maddie. I reminded everyone to keep it down and handed the two gifts I had prepared to Jason. "Pick the one you like." Jason lowered his head, shook it, and walked straight to the back of the bus. That was really heartbreaking to see. Karen and I talked about the boy again. She said she'd find a way to remind Jason about personal hygiene. In the afternoon, after school ended, Jason was still sitting quietly in the back row, staring out the window with a sad look. I'm not sure if he heard his friends' comments, or if he was just trying to ignore them. The next day, Jason showed up at school in the same clothes as the day before, and that unpleasant smell was still there. I felt really sorry, but I have to say it smelled like a decaying animal carcass. Yesterday, the teacher reminded you to stay clean. I tried to keep my cool despite the hurtful comments from some of the kids. Jason stayed in the same spot and stayed quiet. After school in the afternoon, I parked in front of Jason's house and waited for a while. The house looked gloomy and dark. It didn't seem like a great place for raising a child. At the window, a woman stood there looking at me. I rolled down the car window, waved, and nodded to her. I guessed she was Jason's mother. She didn't react, just popped something bright red into her mouth and started chewing. I felt a bit creeped out and decided to drive away. I kept glancing at the house in the rearview mirror, really wanting to find out more about Jason. The next day was the weekend, so I drove over to Jason's house with a school bag, some pencils, and 2 new sets of clothes. I knocked on the door, and on the third try, it opened. The woman from yesterday was standing there with a really resentful and unpleasant expression. Her hands and the corners of her mouth were a light red, almost like dried blood. "Hello, I'm Jason's school bus driver." The woman's expression didn't change. I glanced inside the house after catching a strong, fishy smell. The furniture was all messed up. and there was something on the floor I couldn't quite make out. The woman suddenly slammed the door, and I was so surprised I didn't know how to react. I left the backpack with the pencils and clothes inside and walked away. The next Monday morning, I picked Jason up and saw he was wearing the clothes I gave him, and they fit perfectly. Jason looked a lot fresher, but as soon as he got into the car, the stench was still there, and even worse. "Are you still not showering before school?" The kids were really upset, and I wasn't sure how to handle it. Karen and I decided to visit his house that evening. While she knocked on the main door, I walked around to take a look. Through the window, I was stunned to see Jason with his face and new clothes covered in blood and his arms covered in deep scratches. Jason stared at a hidden corner I couldn't see, looking vacant and exhausted. The slurping sound was like some poor little animal was being ripped apart. When Jason saw me through the window, he looked really panicked and quickly ran toward the hidden corner. Immediately told Miss Karen to call the police, while I kept banging on the door and calling out to Jason. The police showed up and quickly broke the door lock. The scene inside the house was so disturbing that it made everyone who saw it shudder. Karen vomited and collapsed. Scattered around the house were torn toads, frogs, chickens, and other small parts like nails, feet, and so on. Jason stood with his arms outstretched in front of him, while a woman was munching on a toad in the corner. The police quickly restrained her, and Jason rushed over to hug the woman tightly, begging everyone not to hurt his mother. That was Jason's mother. She was on drugs and had gone insane. Jason and his mother's life had been extremely miserable with a cruel husband and father. The mother and son moved here with the help of an acquaintance. Because of a life filled with unhappiness and pain, Jason's mother couldn't stay strong and did drugs. Jason wasn't taken care of properly. His body was covered with countless sores and infections. That's why his body always had an unpleasant smell. After everything was sorted out at the police station, Karen burst into tears and hugged Jason. She temporarily adopted Jason, while his mother was taken care of and treated at the local hospital. I also became more of a friend and companion to Jason, giving him extra love and care. I hope all children in the world get the love and care they need. Some memories, no matter how hard you try to bury them, still find a way to creep back on quiet nights. The story I'm about to tell happened 15 years ago at Jefferson High School, but even now, I can't sleep soundly when I hear a knock at the window at night. I'm David. In 2008, I was a high school senior from a tough background. I spent most of my after-school hours in the school's computer lab because my family couldn't afford a computer of our own. And that's where I met Luke. Luke was my age, but a year behind in school because he'd moved around so much. He always sat in the corner of the room, shoulders hunched. His messy brown hair hid his eyes behind thick glasses. His gray t-shirt was faded, his jeans had stains, and his white sneakers were yellowed. Luke's family had fallen apart the year before, after his parents had a loud fight right outside the school that everyone witnessed. After that, Luke became even shyer and more isolated. He spent hours in front of the computer screen, typing steadily, as if searching for a world where he could belong. I recognized that look because I'd been through it myself. The first year after my dad's accident, I also wore old clothes. Always kept my head down to avoid eye contact, wishing I could be invisible. I was lucky that I still had a complete family. We got through that tough time together. Maybe that's why I felt empathy for Luke from the first time I met him. That day, just like any other, Luke and I were studying in the computer lab. A little while later, heavy footsteps dragged across the floor. Travis walked over, followed by Jake and Connor. They were a notorious trio known for being bullies. Travis had a muscular build, short blonde hair almost buzzed to his scalp, and sharp blue eyes. Travis stood right behind Luke, with Jake and Connor on either side. "Hey nerd, do my homework for me," Travis ordered. Luke didn't answer, continuing to type. Before Luke transferred to the school, I was Travis's target. I understood that feeling, the helplessness of being threatened and not being able to do anything. Travis ordered Luke to do his homework for him. He snatched Luke's book and threw it to the floor when he saw him refuse. I stood up, quickly stepping to stand between them. "Travis, leave him alone." He scoffed, tilting his head to look at me. Before leaving, Travis still kicked the table leg and warned that he'd be back. I turned back to see Luke picking up his book and continuing to study as if nothing had happened. After school, Luke and I walked home together. I said a few things, but Luke only responded with slight smiles. At a small alley, Luke would turn in. He looked at me. "Thanks. Sometimes I think about doing something to make them stop." "What do you mean?" I asked, confused. But Luke had already turned and walked away. 2 days later, we were in class when the alarm blared throughout the school. The principal's voice echoed over the loudspeaker. "All students and teachers immediately initiate lockdown procedures. This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill." Immediately, Mr. Johnson locked the classroom door and pulled the blinds to cover the windows. We all huddled in the dark corner, our cell phones lit up, messages from friends and other classes constantly coming in. "Someone in a mask in the parking lot," they said. "There's blood." "Travis didn't come home last night. His parents are looking for him." The whispers made the situation even more chaotic. My heart pounded. The next message from an 11th grade student made the blood in my veins run cold. The police found Travis in his own car's trunk. He's dead. We sat silently in the dark for 2 hours. When the alarm finally stopped and the doors opened, Mr. Johnson, with a pale face, announced a serious incident and that the school would be closed for the next week. That night, I couldn't sleep. The image of Travis, who had bullied Luke just 2 days before, now dead in his own car's trunk, kept replaying in my mind. Around 2 a.m., I heard a soft knock at my window. I walked to the window, pulling the curtain back a little. Luke was standing outside, his gray t-shirt soaked with sweat, his face pale under the streetlight. But what gave me chills was the smile I'd never seen on Luke's face before. When he saw me, Luke pointed at the window latch. I opened the window. "Luke, what are you doing here?" "I need to tell you about what happened at school today." Luke's voice was different. Luke looked around and then whispered, "That masked person was me." I felt all the air get sucked out of my lungs. "What are you saying?" "Travis will never hurt anyone again." Luke stepped closer to the window, his eyes gleaming in the dark. "Did you see? He looked so peaceful in the trunk." "Luke, what did you do?" "I waited for him in the parking lot." Luke chuckled softly. He even laughed, saying that I finally dared to confront him. But when I pulled out the knife, "Stop talking. Do you know?" When Travis pleaded, his voice trembled just like mine every day at school. Luke looked me straight in the eyes. Now he understands what fear feels like. "Luke, you need to turn yourself in. I'm not done yet. Jake and Connor will understand too, and all the others." Luke stepped back from the window. He disappeared into the darkness. I stood there for a few minutes, my hands trembling. Then I picked up the phone and dialed 911. At the request of the police, I recounted all the information I knew. The next morning, Luke didn't come to school. The police found him at home with blood-stained clothes and a knife in his desk drawer. They also found a list, with Jake and Connor at the top, followed by the names of 15 other students. I'll never forget the line Luke wrote in his diary. "I don't want to be a bad person, but I'm so tired of enduring." Luke was arrested on charges of first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit terrorism. He confessed to everything without showing any remorse. The news spread throughout the school. I never saw Luke again, but every night I remember Luke's face. My bedroom window is always locked tight at night now. Some memories from your teenage years just stick with you, no matter how many years go by. They're like ghosts you can't shake. The story I'm about to tell happened almost 20 years ago, when I was a senior at Madison High School. But every time I think about it, I still get chills, just like the first time it happened. That day, I was standing in front of the main gate of Madison High that night. The air was pretty chilly. The 10-foot-tall steel gate had been locked up tight since the afternoon. The yellow streetlights shined down on the faded metal sign that read, "Madison High School, Home of the Eagles." I glanced at the clock on my phone. We were supposed to meet at 11 p.m., but I got there early because I couldn't sleep. Ever since Marcus brought up the idea in the cafeteria, I couldn't stop thinking about it. Exploring the school at night. Marcus's older brother had done it last year and told stories about it like it was some legendary adventure. "You guys know this school has a basement?" Marcus had said, his eyes lit up with excitement. "My brother said it's like a whole maze down there, and the back window is broken, so it's easy to get in." Jake scoffed. "Are you nuts?" "What about the security guard?" "They don't work weekends." My brother checked. Emma shook her head. "Sounds too risky." But eventually, all four of us agreed. Maybe it was because this week had been so boring with all the tests. We wanted something to remember our senior year. Footsteps on the sidewalk made me turn around. Emma appeared from around the corner. "Tyler, I still think this is a bad idea." "It's just exploring, that's all." "It'll be a memory to tell," I reassured Emma. Jake and Marcus showed up from down the street. "Ready?" Marcus asked, his eyes practically sparkling with excitement. "Are you sure no one's in there?" Emma asked one last time. "The security guard only works Monday through Thursday. The school's totally empty on weekends," Jake replied. We walked toward the school. Marcus led us around to the back of the building, where the basement windows were. "Here it is." My brother said this window's been broken since the summer. The old metal-framed window had a crack in the glass in one corner. Jake tried to pulling it up, and the frame moved up and down a couple of inches. "All right. Who's going down first?" Jake grinned. "I'll go first," I said, wanting to look brave in front of Emma. I pushed the window frame up high, the metal creaking in the dark. The smell of mildew from the basement hit my nose as I squeezed through the opening. My feet touched the concrete floor. Emma slid down next, then Marcus and Jake. All four of us stood in the basement, pulling out our phones and turning on our flashlights. The light shined on stacks of cardboard boxes and old water pipes along the walls. "This place is bigger than I thought," Marcus said, shining his light around the room. The basement stretched out with lots of dark corners and doorways. We spread out to explore the basement. There were many small rooms filled with old school supplies, old machinery, and things that weren't used anymore. After about 5 minutes, I decided to go upstairs. I headed toward the stairs, hearing footsteps following me. I didn't turn around, thinking it was Emma or Marcus wanting to come along. The sound of sneakers hitting the concrete floor was steady, really close. The basement door wasn't locked. I turned the handle, and the iron door opened with a slight creak. The school's main hallway stretched out in the dark, the lockers on both sides forming long shadows. "Don't worry, just a quick look," I whispered. The footsteps were still following me. "Hey, do you see?" I turned around. No one was there. My phone vibrated. Jake's name was on the screen. "Where are you, Tyler?" "We're looking for you all over the basement." Jake's voice echoed. "I'm upstairs." "Did someone follow me up here?" "No, we're still down here." My heart started to pound. Suddenly, a laugh echoed from far away, lingering in the small space. My whole body froze, my mouth trembling with fear. The laugh echoed again, louder this time. A tall figure appeared at the end of the hallway. It was too dark around him, so I could only make out his eyes, staring straight at me. "Jake!" I screamed. I ran as fast as I could. The hallway seemed endless. Heavy footsteps behind me, steady, unhurried, like the person knew I couldn't get away. I ran toward the stairs, my phone still connected to the call. The basement door was still open. I rushed down the steps. Emma screamed when she saw me. "What's wrong?" "We have to go now." "Someone's in the school." Jake looked at me skeptically. "Are you sure? Maybe it was just a shadow or—" Footsteps echoed down the stairs. All four of us heard it. Emma gripped my hand. Marcus immediately turned off his phone. We all hurried to leave. Marcus climbed through the window first. Emma followed. I had to push her up because her hands were shaking too much. Jake went next. I was last, constantly looking back at the stairs. We ran out of the building, across the empty parking lot, to the sidewalk across the street. When I looked back, I saw a figure standing right at the window watching us, their hands pressed against the glass, their face close to the window. I saw the face of a middle-aged man with thinning hair and two eyes staring straight at us. "Did you guys see that?" I pointed toward the window, my voice still shaking. Emma held my arm tightly. "He's watching us." "Don't tell anyone about this, and never come back here again," Jake said, his voice more serious than ever. The figure was still standing there as we walked away. 2 weeks later, news spread throughout town about the police arresting an intruder at Madison High. A 43-year-old man named Robert Henley had been hiding in the school for 3 months after being released from prison for harassment. He had been living in the basement, eating food from the cafeteria. The news report stated that Henley was a former student of the school, graduating in 1999. He was first arrested in 2018 for harassment and illegal entry. Emma called me that night. "Did you see the news? What do you think he would have done if he had caught us that night?" I didn't answer Emma. Some questions are best left unanswered. We kept our promise not to tell this story, leaving behind unanswered questions and a permanent, unshakable fear. Those memories still haunt me to this day. Every time I hear an alarm, my heart pounds, and that terrifying scene flashes before my eyes. I'm Emma. 7 years ago, I was a freshman at Lincoln High School. That day ended with American history class. The room was on the second floor, and the west-facing window meant the afternoon sun shone directly into my face. Tyler sat next to me from day one. He was tall, with curly black hair, and always had a habit of doodling in the margins of his notebook. Sarah sat in the front row, a small Asian girl with thick glasses, always hiding her phone in her pocket to read messages. The lecture on the American Civil War was slowly becoming boring, making my eyelids heavy. Suddenly, the alarm blared, abruptly tearing through the quiet air. Students and teachers. This is not a drill. Please initiate lockdown procedures immediately. The principal's voice echoed over the intercom. My heart pounded, and my hands started to shake. "Turn off the lights now. Everyone get on the floor, away from the windows," the teacher said. The classroom plunged into darkness. Tyler leaned over to me and whispered, "Hey, Emma, it's probably just a mistake." I shook my head vigorously. 5 minutes passed. No sound. Sarah suddenly burst into tears. Ms. Martinez put a finger to her lips, signaling for silence. Suddenly, footsteps echoed in the hallway. Then, they stopped right outside our classroom door. A few seconds later, a slow knock on the door came with a man's voice. "Hello, everyone. This is John from security. Everything is safe now." All of us didn't react, our eyes glued to the door. "Come on, can you hear me? This is just a drill. You can open the door." As soon as the second sentence ended, the doorknob began to turn. The door was locked, and the person tried again. "Open the door. I know you're in there. I just need to make sure everyone is safe," Tyler whispered. "If he's real security, why doesn't he have a badge?" The teacher immediately put her hand to her mouth, signaling him to be quiet. The doorknob started rattling violently. "Open the door immediately. This is an order. You are violating school safety regulations," Ms. Martinez reassured us in a very low voice. A loud bang on the door cut off Ms. Martinez's words. "Open the door! Open it now!" Sarah couldn't hold it in anymore. A sob was about to escape her throat. I quickly squeezed her hand. "I know you're in there. Why aren't you answering me?" Ms. Martinez whispered. "Calm down. The police are coming. We'll be fine." Then, a gunshot rang out, and we screamed. 2 more gunshots followed. "There's a shooter on the 2nd floor!" Someone yelled loudly down the hallway. More gunshots, this time aimed at my classroom door. 3 more shots echoed loudly. At that moment, Sarah couldn't take it anymore. She started trembling violently, her breathing becoming shallow and ragged, like someone drowning. Her eyes behind her thick glasses widened in horror, her face ashen. I can't breathe," Sarah whispered, her voice broken like someone drowning. Her hands clutched her chest, nails digging into her shirt as if to tear through the fabric. Her breathing became frantic, each short breath like a choked sob. Her face was ashen, cold sweat trickling down her forehead. Then suddenly Sarah jumped up, trembling all over. She flailed her arms wildly and screamed loudly. Her glasses flew off, and Sarah unknowingly trampled them. "I have to get out of here," Sarah shrieked. The whole class seemed frozen by her actions. Ms. Martinez quickly stood up to try and stop her, but Sarah had completely lost control. Sarah pushed Tyler aside when he tried to block her path, then lunged towards the door. "Sarah! Stop!" I screamed, but it was too late. As soon as Sarah managed to open the door, her screams were quickly drowned out by continuous gunfire. All of us screamed, covering our heads, unable to witness the scene before us. Some students fainted. After a few minutes, everything went completely silent, but we didn't dare to move even slightly. A few more minutes passed, and then we heard sounds of a struggle and police voices from the hallway. When the classroom door was finally opened, what we saw wasn't the bloody scene we had imagined. Sarah was lying motionless in the middle of the hallway, her face pale without any visible injuries. A few paramedics were performing CPR on her. Out in the hallway, we all trembled as we saw the shooter being apprehended by the police. But his demeanor was completely different from what we had imagined, like someone who had lost all awareness, his eyes empty, and his mouth muttering incomprehensible words. A few police officers entered the classroom, gently motioning for us to move out of the classroom in an orderly fashion. I wanted to run to Sarah, but was held back. and Tyler was still hiding under the table, refusing to move. Sarah was taken into the ambulance and driven away. I vaguely heard that she had passed away. I had to sink to the floor, constantly thinking that if I had held Sarah back, if I had tried to stop her from running out. The next day, news about the shooting filled all the news outlets. The shooter was a former student suffering from severe depression. He was sent for psychiatric treatment and did not have to go to trial. The cause of Sarah's death was announced as panic and sudden cardiac arrest, with no gunshot wounds. 7 years have passed, but every time I hear an alarm, I still see Sarah's pale face and her last gasping breaths. 7 years have passed, but every time I hear an alarm somewhere, I still find myself back in that room with the darkness, the crying, and Sarah. Nathan's Diary. April 27th, 2023. I've just returned home after nearly a month of treatment at the hospital. On this exact day a month ago, a terrifying event occurred at school. To this day, I still feel pain, and my ears ring from the terrifying gunshots that day. It was an ordinary day, and I arrived at school feeling quite anxious because I was about to receive my math test results. I couldn't do the test. I didn't understand anything when I read those dreadful equations. I wish today wouldn't come, Rachel. I'll definitely get my allowance for the whole week cut by my mom. I complained to my best friend sitting next to me. In contrast to me, Rachel was an outstanding student, especially in mathematics. Our houses are on the same street, so we usually go to school together. It might be a bit rushed, considering we are both only 9 years old, but I really like Rachel. As expected, I got an F on my test, while Rachel scored an A+. I tugged at my hair forcefully. I'm definitely doomed. Rachel turned to look at me and smiled helplessly. I'm actually really happy. The homeroom teacher asked those who received low scores to get their parents' signatures on the test and submit it back by tomorrow morning. Is there anything worse than this for a 9-year-old student? I muttered. Rachel, can we not go home today? Or can I sleep over at your place? Stop talking nonsense, Nathan, Rachel said, slightly annoyed. Suddenly, we all startled and looked at each other because the noise was so loud. A few students approached the window to look down with curiosity and excitement, while others wanted to run out of the classroom to see where the noise was coming from. Everyone, return to your seats immediately, our homeroom teacher ordered us. I looked at Rachel, who seemed very tense. What's wrong? I asked her. Nathan! I'm sure that was the sound of gunshots. Gunshots! Chris, the chubby guy sitting behind us, exclaimed loudly after overhearing the conversation. The whole class was in an uproar, while our homeroom teacher kept urging us to stay quiet. She made a few phone calls, then broke down in tears and rushed to lock the classroom door. We all fell into confusion, silently turning our gazes toward her. After a few minutes, our homeroom teacher looked at us with red eyes, took a deep breath, and announced, Dear students, we have a small incident, nothing major, so I need your cooperation. First, absolute silence. Then, very quietly, take cover under your desks at each of your seats until further instructions. We can all do this, right? Our homeroom teacher raised her hand to her mouth to signal for silence. We nodded in understanding and then began following her instructions. None of us were given exact details about the situation, but we all knew that the fact the homeroom teacher had instructed the entire class to stay in their seats and remain silent was a very serious matter. Rachel couldn't stop crying, and her distress made those around her even more frightened. I held Rachel's hand tightly, but it didn't seem to help. Rachel, can you come up here with me? Her voice was gentle. As soon as Rachel stood up, a series of loud explosions rang out. The lock and window of the door shattered, and a powerful force pushed the door open. Chaos quickly ensued, with screams, cries, and the deafening sound of gunfire shaking the room. The homeroom teacher rushed over and hugged Rachel tightly. In the blink of an eye, both of them were covered in numerous holes from the gunfire. The homeroom teacher and Rachel fell right in front of me. My entire body froze. That image, their faces, I will never be able to forget. The gunshots stopped, leaving only the cries and moans of the other students. As for me, I sat there staring at the homeroom teacher and Rachel with wide, empty eyes, my mouth agape. A little while later, 2 police officers arrived. We were asked to hold hands and walk out of the classroom in a single file, maintaining complete silence. I didn't follow the instructions. I couldn't control my body at that moment. One of the police officers came over and carried me away. I was hospitalized right after that, and it took about a week before I was able to communicate again. "Mom, are Rachel and the teacher okay?" That was the question I asked every day for a month in the hospital, but my mom never answered. After being discharged from the hospital, I told my parents I wanted to go to Rachel's house, but they took me to the local cemetery instead. Here, there was Rachel, my homeroom teacher, the chubby guy Chris, the class president Charity, Miss Dana, and even the principal. I'm Jared Mason, a senior studying computer science at the University of Pennsylvania. My life revolves around stressful classes, group projects, and the familiar coffee shop near campus. But that day, everything changed forever. The morning started just like any other day. In the Python programming class, I sat next to Noah, my best friend. "Nathan texted me yesterday," Noah whispered while the professor was lecturing. "He asked about you, but it sounded strange. Like he was trying to get some information, I just forced a smile and pretended not to care. Since Nathan transferred schools 2 years ago, we had almost completely cut off contact. The relationship between me and him had fallen apart due to misunderstandings I tried to forget. By lunchtime, I went to the restroom. The space was strangely quiet, with only the sound of water dripping from the sink. I was washing my face when the lights suddenly went out. The air became stifling, as if it were being suffocated. I could hear an announcement coming from the school's public address system, but since I was washing my face, I didn't pay attention, only hearing the sound of water running. My phone vibrated, and a message from Noah appeared. "Jared, someone brought a gun to school. The school is on lockdown. Be careful." My whole body went stiff. The message hit me like a punch to the mind. I opened the restroom door and walked down the empty hallway. The classroom doors were all shut tight, with no sounds coming from inside. I decided to head back to the computer lab, the closest place where I felt safe. Inside the room, the weak light from a single monitor illuminated the still space. I closed the door and held my breath. The sound of footsteps echoed in the hallway, making me shiver. A figure appeared through the frosted glass door. My heart raced when the door opened and the person stepped in. It was Nathan. He didn't see me right away. In his hand was a rifle. I froze. A mixture of familiarity and fear washed over me. Nathan, my old friend, now the one bringing a gun to school? His eyes were cold, empty. Nathan moved slowly, looking around the room. Fortunately, he didn't notice me hiding in the dark corner. After what felt like an eternity, Nathan left, leaving me sitting motionless, my mind swirling with unanswered questions. Memories flooded back like a huge wave. Nathan had once been my closest friend, but everything changed when we worked on a big project together in our sophomore year. While working, I accidentally discovered that Nathan had plagiarized an old newspaper. Under pressure to get good grades, I reported it to the professor. Nathan was suspended for a semester. I thought I had done the right thing, but Nathan never forgave me. He lost his scholarship opportunity and had to transfer to another school. We cut off contact after that. Rumors about Nathan started spreading, that he had fallen into depression, that he blamed those who had betrayed him. I never thought that I would be the focus of that anger. When I walked out of the computer lab, a police officer approached and handed me a journal. "We found this in Nathan's backpack. You're the first name on the elimination list." The journal was filled with scribbled words, expressing pain and hatred. Jared Mason. He ruined my future. I must make him pay, reading each line. I could feel Nathan's desperation. But what stunned me was another part. I don't want to do this. I just want him to understand my pain. The next day, I faced Nathan in the holding cell. He sat there, his face gaunt, but his eyes no longer cold. "I didn't mean to shoot anyone," he whispered. "I just wanted you to know what I've been through." I didn't know what to say. The regret surged within me like a wave, sweeping away any excuses. I realized that reporting him that day wasn't just about fairness, but also about my own selfishness to protect my grades. Nathan was convicted, but sent to a mental health treatment center instead of prison. As for me, I decided to write him a letter. In the letter, I apologized for what I had done and wanted to help him start over. 2 months later, I attended a mental health workshop at school. I shared my story, encouraging everyone to pay attention to the signs of distress in those around them. Nathan might not have fallen into the abyss if I had listened to him more. Although I can't change the past, I hope my actions now will help people like Nathan find the light in the darkness. I am Maria, 23 years old. I am a science teacher currently interning at a high school in the suburbs of Houston. Although I have taught in various places, this is the first time I truly feel the stress of teaching at a large high school. It was a Friday afternoon, with light rain, and a heavy, damp feeling enveloped the school campus. I had just finished a lecture in class and needed to return to the laboratory to get some supplies for the next lesson. My laboratory is on the lowest floor of the building, quite far from the classroom, so every time I have to go back and forth, I often feel a bit lazy. That day, my 2 lessons were back to back, so I quickly prepared everything. The long, desolate hallway, with the dim light from the old yellow lamps, made the atmosphere even colder and quieter. This feeling made me feel a little uncomfortable, as if I were entering a space that didn't belong to me. Just a few steps into the hallway, my phone suddenly rang. I slowed down, took the phone out of my pocket, and looked at the screen. An automatic message from the school's communication department appeared. "The school is on lockdown. This is not a drill." A wave of fear instantly surged up, and my heart began to race. I had never faced such a situation before. I felt like I was standing in the middle of a nightmare, not knowing what to do next. Although I wanted to run straight back to my classroom, it was likely the door would have been locked by the time I arrived. A sense of anxiety and unease took over, and I decided to hide in a nearby storage closet. I immediately turned off the lights, locked the door, and sat on the floor, trying to steady my breath. The sound of alarms ringing throughout the building only intensified the tension. My phone rang again, and a new message appeared. "Please remain locked down. A suspected armed intruder has entered the building. The police have been notified." The feeling I had when reading that message was indescribable. Helpless, confused. I felt trapped in a situation with no way out. Every second that passed added an invisible layer of fear, and I didn't know whether I was safe or not. I closed my eyes, telling myself that everything would be okay, but I couldn't control the growing fear in my chest. After a while, I heard footsteps in the hallway. The footsteps got closer, then suddenly stopped right in front of the closet door. I felt like my heart was about to jump out of my chest, and my hand gripped my phone so tightly it hurt. Suddenly the doorknob turned, and the closet door slowly opened. My eyes widened in disbelief at what I was seeing. A man stood there, probably around 50 years old, wearing a plain t-shirt and old jeans. His face was gaunt, his eyes sunken, and he looked at me with a pleading expression. I didn't recognize him, but the feeling of anxiety in me was overwhelming. Can I hide here?" he said, his voice trembling slightly. I didn't know why, but part of me felt sorry for him, and another part felt scared. I couldn't refuse, especially in such a dangerous situation. Empathy won, and I opened the closet door to let him in without saying anything further. A few seconds later, I received another update from the school. "Do not open your classroom door for any reason. The suspect is believed to be an older man with a beard." I shuddered as I read that message. Suddenly, everything became clear. The man in front of me fit the description in the update. I couldn't contain the confusion in my mind. A cold chill ran down my spine. There was no time to think further, and I hurriedly opened the closet door and ran to the emergency exit. Every step felt heavy, but I couldn't stop. From the exit, I ran straight to the parking lot. Once in my car, I gasped for air to relieve the pain in my chest. As I looked through the rearview mirror, I saw a familiar figure in the parking lot. My student standing not far away. The boy was looking around as if searching for someone, his expression anxious. Why wasn't he in class in such a tense situation? I quickly reached for the door handle, intending to rush over to the boy, but suddenly I heard a voice. "Dad!" I froze. The man I had seen earlier in the lab was approaching. He had a gun holster at his waist. My whole body stiffened, unable to move. My eyes fixed on the scene before me. What was happening? The boy and the man exchanged a few quick words. The man swiftly disappeared into the vacant lot, with the dense trees behind the school. The boy, still looking around anxiously, ran back toward the classroom. I sat there, my hand still on the door handle, a flood of thoughts rushing through my mind. A feeling of shock consumed my whole body, and I couldn't believe what I had just witnessed. The fear over the relationship between the boy and the man left me breathless. About 10 minutes later, I received a message on my phone announcing that the lockdown had been lifted. I calmed myself, quickly returned to my classroom, where the police were already investigating the situation. I sought out the police and privately shared with them what I had witnessed, describing the man and his strange behavior in detail. I asked them to keep this information confidential, hoping it wouldn't affect the boy. I didn't want him to suffer criticism or suspicion from his peers or anyone around him. A few days later, it was announced that the man had entered the school by convincing the security guard that he was there to pick up his child. The police still hadn't identified the man. The school's security cameras had captured footage, but it was just a blurry silhouette with no clear face. The police believed the man might be connected to a previous missing persons case. He had used his son as a link to get into the school without being detected. He had planned to take control of the school and create chaos to make his escape. But when he realized the situation was exposed, he hastily withdrew. All I had was confusion and constant fear. Would he return to the school? The next day, I saw the boy again in class. He smiled as usual, but I couldn't shake the strange feeling when looking at him. Did he know something I didn't? The boy's gaze seemed to hide something, and I couldn't rid myself of the uneasy feeling. Although the fear still haunted me, I couldn't help but feel sympathy for the student. He had to live in the shadow of secrets that might never come to light. I am Maya, 18 years old, a gymnast currently enrolled in the advanced training program at the University of Texas at Austin. My dream is to shine on the international stage, achieving great accomplishments to showcase my talent and determination. My friends and I go through intense study and training sessions, spending most of our time in class and then returning to the dorms to rest. Sometimes I visit my family on the weekends. My dorm room has 4 people, all of whom are in the same class, and I am closest to Nicole. Is this the workout outfit you just bought on Amazon? Isn't it beautiful? That's pretty awesome. I think I've gained a little weight. Don't invite me to late-night snacks anymore. Those are some casual chats between Nicole and me on the way to that fateful afternoon training session. We will be taught a new move, the vault, also known as the pommel horse. When we entered the class, the coach was already waiting for us. Coach Mandy, a very strict and tough coach. But I really enjoy her classes, and it was Coach Mandy who gave me a lot of strength to overcome the difficult phases in pursuing this sport. Pay attention, everyone! The vault is one of the main events in gymnastics and requires athletes to have strength, speed, and precise technique. In the vault, the athlete performs a series of quick movements, starting with a run-up, a jump onto the vaulting horse, and executes aerial moves before landing on the mat. Wait a minute. The landing mat. Suddenly, Coach Mandy stopped her lecture, muttering to herself as she walked toward the landing mat. The sound of the zipper on the mat was pulled tightly, and all of us turned our gaze toward her in silence. All right, let's start the training session. Coach Mandy demonstrated to show us the process and the techniques required to perform the vault. Indeed, she was a coach who had won international gold medals. Every move she made left us mesmerized. We applauded in admiration for our coach. Maya, she called my name. You're first. I was a little nervous, took a deep breath, and then executed a smooth and precise run-up, jumped onto the vaulting horse, and performed the aerial moves. However, when I landed on the mat, I could clearly feel the wobble from the mat, and I fell. Coach Mandy looked at me and smiled gently. It's okay. I believe you'll do better next time. Devlin, you're next. Coach Mandy called Devlin, a friend of mine with excellent technique. However, Devlin also landed quite awkwardly, surprising the entire class. Coach Mandy still kept her smile, not commenting on anyone's technique, and called each of the 15 people in the class to take their turn. This kept happening repeatedly, and each person had jumped for the 7th time. Indeed, with each attempt, our technique became more stable, and we got more accustomed to the mat. You're doing great. Coach Mandy smiled and clapped. We also clapped along with her, feeling quite uplifted by the praise from our coach. Suddenly, Nicole shouted loudly, startling me as I stood next to her. "B! Blood!" Nicole stammered, pointing towards the training mat. There was indeed blood, a lot of it, soaking a large area of the mat. We were all in shock, and one of the girls fainted from fear. Coach Mandy asked a few of the boys in the class to take the fainted girl to the school's infirmary, while the rest of us quickly returned to the dorms to rest, and the class ended early. Only a few of the boys quickly followed her instructions, while Nicole, the others, and I remained standing frozen on the ground. Don't you hear what I'm saying? Coach Mandy's voice made Nicole and a few others burst into tears. Nico hurriedly grabbed my hand and led me away. Back in the room, we were confused and discussed a lot about the strange occurrence that had just happened. It'll be fine. I don't think it's anything serious. I reassured my friends, though in reality, I was extremely confused. The image of the blood-soaked mat haunted me and my classmates, but we all remained silent. Our focus on studying declined due to the confusion, worry, and a sense of foreboding about something bad about to happen. Every night Nicole would have nightmares. She would talk in her sleep, cry, or even scream. Nicole's parents had requested permission for her to take a few days off from school to go home and rest. The constant tension weighed on us, leaving us feeling heavy and exhausted. In the following days, when we went to the class on nutrition and health, we didn't see Mr. Joyce teaching. According to some rumors at school, Mr. Joyce had been missing for almost a week, for unknown reasons. Another training session with Coach Mandy took place according to the schedule. Suddenly, the police appeared during the class, handcuffed Coach Mandy, and led her away, leaving all of us in shock. In the equipment storage, the police found the training mat from that day piled up in a corner. They pulled the zipper and opened it. Inside the training mat was Mr. Joyce with a twisted and crumpled body smelling horribly. His despicable behavior of peeping on female students is unacceptable. I let the victims directly punish that pervert. These were the words Coach Mandy confidently declared in court. We were deeply shocked by Mr. Joyce's true nature, and even more terrified when we remembered that training session. Nicole and Devlin dropped out of school due to the overwhelming psychological shock. Coach Mandy was sentenced to life in prison and could be granted parole after serving 15 years.